My father back then relied on his first wife selling tofu to support his studies and finally became an official in the court. He concealed his marriage and married my mother, causing his first wife to die of melancholy. My mother knew he regretted it, so she did everything possible to please Wang Ru, the daughter left behind by his first wife. Even when my engagement was set, my mother still urged me to give my future husband to her too. She said, "This is the last time. We'll have paid back what we owe her." I laughed. "The sins you committed, why should I be the one to pay them back?" My mother acted like she'd lost her mind, insisting on marrying me down to a poor family. It just so happened that the filial and incorrupt candidates recommended from various regions came to the capital for inspection and examination. My mother was very excited and came back to tell me, "Mother will definitely help you find a good match this time." I rolled my eyes. "My marriage doesn't need mother's concern. Grandmother will handle it herself." She thought I didn't know. She wanted to marry me into a poor family to elevate Wang Ru's future in-laws by comparison. After all, although my father is only a capital magistrate, my maternal grandfather has a title and ranks among the 9 ministers. My mother is my grandmother's only daughter, so those who can't reach high enough to marry into my grandmother's family try every means to form marriage ties with my family. Plus, with my mother's years of maneuvering, outsiders have always thought my grandmother treats Wang Ru like her own. So as long as they marry me off, Wang Ru would be their only option. She has got her calculations all figured out, but she thinks I am stupid and still tries to deceive me. Don't listen to your grandmother. She just wants you to marry up, but marrying into a high-ranking family means a hard life. It is better to marry a newly successful man from a humble background. I laughed and looked at her. Really? She looked sincere. Of course it is true. Go talk to your grandmother and tell her not to meddle in your marriage. I smiled and said, "All right, I'll go talk to grandmother." I went and complained to grandmother. Grandmother nearly tore her apart. She came back crying to settle the score with me. I simply said, "I can let you have your way with other things, but you can't mess around with my marriage." She pointed at me. You don't recognize good intentions. Always like your grandmother, thinking about clinging to the powerful. You'll regret it someday." I frowned at her. I really wanted to give her a mirror so she could see. With that stupid look of hers, could she still fool me again? I wasn't this clear-headed since childhood. I remember when I was little, my father brought Wang Ru home and explained that publicly she was our family's adopted daughter, but actually she was the legitimate daughter of our family. The way my father looked at her was full of tender affection, something he never had when looking at me. My mother immediately patted her chest and promised, "From now on, I'll definitely treat Ruer like my own. Ruer comes first in this family." So from then on, everything had to be picked over by her before it was my turn. If she didn't leave anything, then I had nothing. Actually, my mother's dowry was generous. It wasn't that she couldn't afford to buy an extra portion. More often, it was that Wang Ru didn't want me to have anything. So to avoid upsetting her, I had nothing. Wang Ru pointed at my face and said, "Your mother is nothing but a replacement wife. In front of me, you are just a concubine-born daughter." My mother heard it and still smiled apologetically at her. Yes, Ruer is right. Those are the rules back then. All of this was simply an undeserved disaster for me. But even so, my father would still often look at Wang Ru with pity and sigh, "Poor thing, with your mother gone, you can't even hold your head up high." Me mother was so understanding, she immediately got it, so she began to painstakingly pave the way for Wang Ru, with the goal of making her not only honored in our family, but also able to walk with her head held high outside, from childhood, on whatever my maternal grandmother sent me. My mother gave it all to Wang Ru. She even had Wang Ru go out and show off, saying it was specially sent to her by my maternal grandmother, to earn Wang Ru a reputation of being valued by the Marquis's manor. She really put in the effort, ladder. When word of this reached my maternal grandmother's ears, she flew into a rage. When she summoned my mother to scold her, "I was there too," she said. "By degrading yourself to a concubine, you are dragging down the Marquis Manor's reputation." My mother just cried. "Wang Lang has such deep and righteous feelings for his first wife. I couldn't bear it." My maternal grandmother was furious. It was that Wang man himself who abandoned his wife and daughter. What does it have to do with us? If he feels regret, then you divorce him and have nothing to do with each other from now on. My mother just cried her heart out. "Mother, if I leave Wang Lang, Your daughter won't be able to live either. My maternal grandmother gave up on her. She was afraid I'd be as stupid as my mother, so she started putting effort into me. Grandmother originally wanted to take me to the Marquise Manor to raise me. Who knew my mother would show up at the door making a scene, saying if they were taking me, they had to take Wangru too, so people wouldn't think Wangru wasn't valued. So the matter was dropped. Actually, I know that although grandmother deeply regretted spoiling my mother, she still couldn't bear to let her go, so my mother always had ways to manipulate her. Not like my father, he actually had no feelings for my mother. My mother had no way to deal with him and could only comply with everything to get a bit of kindness from him. Honestly, I really look down on my mother. She only knows how to bully those who treat her well. After failing to take me to the Marquis Manor, my grandmother thought of another way. She chose the famous Madame Xi from the capital city to be my tutor. Choosing Madame Xi was also after careful consideration. When my mother was young, she was sent to the Kaozo Women's Academy to study under the most renowned talented lady, Master Ban. But when Master Ban got old, for some reason she had a change of heart and wrote Lessons for Women. My grandmother read it later. It taught women to be humble and weak, respectful and cautious, submissive and obedient, and so on. It even opened with a passage, when a girl is born, on the third day, lay her beneath the bed, and name her humble and weak master of those below. In other words, 3 days after giving birth to a daughter, you should make her sleep under the bed to show her humbleness and low status. After my grandmother read it, she was furious and said bluntly, simply unbearable to read. She once suspected that my mother became like this because she read that piece of trash. And the Madame Xi she chose for me was a disciple of another great master, Tal Fengshen. Lady Tal was Master Ban's sister-in-law. After reading her sister-in-law's admonitions for women, she was furious and immediately wrote a book criticizing her. After my grandmother read Lady Tal's book, she finally felt relieved, so she chose Madame Xi, who inherited Lady Tal's legacy, to be my female teacher. Just as I was about to start school, my mother came to make trouble again, as expected. She wanted to keep me from going to school to force my grandmother to compromise. There are 2 daughters in the family, but only Yuner gets to study under a famous teacher. Won't that invite criticism? Please consider my situation. Mother, either send both of them together, or don't send either at all. This time my grandmother was well prepared. She personally took Wangru to meet Madame Xi, making my mother and me watch from the side. Wangru, used to being arrogant at home, blurted out, I am actually the legitimate eldest daughter of the Wang family, more noble than Wang Yun. Madam, you'd be better off teaching me than teaching Wang Yun. She just didn't understand. What did she, my father, or even the Wang family amount to? Madame Xi smiled slightly and dropped a line. Poor character, even if you were nobility from the palace, I wouldn't teach you. Then she threw them out. Grandmother was willing to lose face herself to teach my mother a lesson. Unfortunately, my mother showed no remorse. She went to great lengths to send Wangru to the Cao family's girls' school. Wangru was so smug about it that she openly said at the girls' school that Madame Xi was nothing, but Madame Xi was born into a royal household, held the honor of a princess, and had long been renowned throughout the capital city for her talent and learning. No one dared to agree with her, and it even caused my mother to be scolded by my grandmother. When I was little and didn't understand, I even gloated and waited to watch the drama unfold. I thought my mother knew she'd cause trouble, but after getting scolded, she came back and didn't dare make a peep. When I was young, I didn't understand why Wangru had to compete with me. Yet my mother would suppress me, afraid I'd surpass Wangru. Those days were naturally hard to bear, and I resented it too. I didn't feel that my grandmother favored me either. But under Madame Xi's guidance, I gradually understood my grandmother's painstaking efforts. My teacher said, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. Your grandmother is planning far ahead for you. My grandmother didn't bother competing over a piece of clothing or a snack's worth of favoritism for me. She simply chose Madame C to be my tutor. The effect was extremely obvious. I entered school at 8, and at some point I saw through my father's hypocrisy and fickleness. I no longer longed for my mother's affection either. She gradually became foolish in my eyes, and every time she tried to justify herself, it was full of holes. In other words, she could no longer deceive me. I am 15 this year, and there is no rush to discuss marriage yet. Wangru is 3 years older than me, so she is really anxious. Actually, many people have come to propose to her, but they're all minor officials or illegitimate sons from prominent families. She is not satisfied with any of them. My dad tentatively suggested there was a young man who looked pretty good and should have a promising future. She cried so hard she nearly hanged herself, demanding of my dad, if my mother were still here, I'd be the legitimate eldest daughter of the capital magistrate. Would I be matched with someone like that? At the mention of her mother, my dad stammered and didn't dare say anything. My mom quickly coaxed her. No rush, no rush. Once Yunar's marriage is settled first, you'll have even better options. I was sitting right there having tea at the time. Wangru glanced at me, then covered her face with a handkerchief and cried, "You always say that, but how old am I already? Just hurry up and marry her off so she doesn't hold me back for nothing." My mom hurriedly said, All right. While the recommended scholars are in the capital this time, I'll pick someone good for your sister." My dad seemed to feel this was somewhat inappropriate. He rarely asked me, "Has your maternal grandfather's side mentioned anything about your marriage?" I put down my teacup and smiled. In answer to father, I am young. Why would I be in a rush about this? Hearing this, my mom's expression changed. But my dad didn't catch the implication in my words at all. He continued, "Then when you go to Marquis Manor to pay respects, ask your maternal grandmother." I smiled. That would be even more improper. What proper young lady would eagerly run off to ask about her own marriage? Wangru flew into a rage. What are you insinuating?" I couldn't be bothered to deal with her. "Father, mother is here to worry about everything for you. Even if grandfather and grandmother are unhappy, mother will be there to cry and make a fuss." Now my father finally caught on and was so angry at me that he kept coughing. It startled my mother so much that she kept calling out. Wang Lang Lang Langra was so angry that she kept crying. I turned around and left. As I was leaving, I could still hear my mother scolding, "This girl. Following Madam Xi around, who knows what she's learned. She doesn't read the admonitions for women at all." A few days later, my grandmother came in person. My mother insisted on bringing Wangru along to pay respects, and my grandmother's expression looked quite displeased. It wasn't until I smiled and came over calling out "grandmother" that her expression softened a bit. Grandmother pulled me to sit beside her and smiled, saying, "I haven't seen my Yunar for 3 days. Have you been practicing your painting properly?" I said, "I am not afraid of grandmother's inspection." My mother hurriedly said, "Ruer has also been practicing her chin extremely well. Someone quickly bring the eldest young lady's chin." Grandmother turned her face away in disgust. "No need." Wangru's expression was displeased. My mother naturally had to for her. "Mother, you shouldn't be so biased." A trace of wariness showed between grandmother's brows, but she quickly composed herself and turned to look at me with a smile. "Grandmother came because she has selected a few families and wants you to decide for yourself." I looked at her curiously. It turned out that someone had brought a marriage proposal to grandmother. I listened as she listed several names, waiting quietly, and sure enough heard the name I wanted to hear. Also Prince Jing's heir Luzi. I broke into a smile. Grandmother smiled knowingly and exchanged a tacit look with me. "Decided?" she asked me. I said, "Decided," grandmother said, with a smile. Good. This exchange probably left my mother completely confused. Decided? Decided on who? Mother, those people you just mentioned are either prince's descendants or noble young masters. My Yunar isn't worthy of them. Let me choose from among the filial and incorrupt officials instead. My grandmother finally completely lost her temper. "What do you mean not worthy? Yunar is graceful and elegant, diligent and studious, and everyone praises her. Only you talk about her as if she were mud. Do you even deserve to be called a mother?" Grandmother was obviously furious to the extreme, yet my mother still had to argue. No, Yunar's marriage must be decided by me, but her fussing was useless. She still felt utterly wronged. How can it be that a mother has no say in her own daughter's marriage? "Mother, I gave birth to Yunar." In that moment. The look in grandmother's eyes as she watched her was indescribably disappointed. I looked up at grandmother, thinking to myself that these past 2 years grandmother had grown increasingly impatient with mother. It seemed the bond between mother and daughter was also being worn away to nothing. Prince Jing's heir, Luzi, was Madam Xi's nephew. He was serving as a hostage in the capital city according to custom, and also studied painting with me. I don't know when it started, but he came every day asking after Madame Xi's well-being through the bamboo curtain. Then he'd ask, "Is Yuner well?" At first, it was Madame Xi who'd answer with a smile. "Yuner is well today." Later it became me answering personally. In reply to the heir apparent, "Yuner is well through cold and heat." I began to look forward to his figure that would appear outside the bamboo curtain every day. This was the most beautiful stroke of color in my painting. He proposed marriage, and grandmother would arrange everything properly. Everything would fall into place naturally. I only needed to wait peacefully. Who would have thought the next day my mother came? I heard Wang Ru, cried all night last night, and my father stubbornly didn't come home, as if my getting engaged was some enormous crime. My mother looked even more haggard. "Sure enough," she said, "Yuner, your father and I have discussed it and plan to have Ruer marry into Prince Jing's manor first." "Me, is this something you two can just decide and make happen?" She took my hand and said, "I am doing this for your own good. In a family like that, you'll suffer." I shook off her hand. "Go tell that to the people at Prince Jing's manor yourself." My mother said quite naturally, "Ruer's status is only that of an adopted daughter, and she has no Marquis Manor bloodline. How would the prince's manor agree? We were thinking that when the time comes, we just have her take your place in the bridal sedan." I listened carefully, and then, once she has entered the household, everything will work out. After all, Ruer is more beautiful than you and has thoroughly studied the admonitions for women. The heir apparent will surely like her when he sees her. She looked so confident. I actually laughed. He really might not like her. "You know," my mother glared at me, "this matter has already been decided by your father and me. As our child, obeying your parents is what you should do." Sure enough, she has been ruined by reading that damn Lessons for Women. "Before the wedding, you are not to leave the house, lest you say nonsense in front of your grandmother again." Oh, so this means putting me under house arrest. I just looked at her like this. "Mother, have you ever, for even one day, thought about my happiness?" She actually said, "How could I not? Why else would I scheme and toil so hard, if not to give you a stable home?" Really, it has been a long time since she has made me this angry. Even when she talked about having Wang Ru marry in my place or putting me under house arrest, I wasn't that angry because I knew she couldn't pull it off anyway. But hearing those words, I was actually enraged. I sneered, "If you want to debase yourself, go ahead on your own. Don't drag me and my grandmother into it." The moment I finished speaking, she slapped me. I was stunned. She was furious enough, pointing her finger at me for a long while. "You've been spoiled by your grandmother, eyes set high but skills set low, only thinking of climbing up the social ladder. Shameless." I looked at her. I remember when I was little, when Wang Ru first came to our house, I made a fuss too. It always ended with a slap from her. Later I learned to be clever, and it has been a long time since I've been hit. Why does she think now that hitting me would still work? I sneered and said, "My maternal grandfather is the Marquis of Guangbing, holding the rank of 9 ministers. My maternal uncle, despite his young age, already commands the Golden Guard. My mentor is the Princess of Prince Jing's Manor. No matter how absurdly you suppress me with your words, I know very well in my heart that this so-called social climbing is nothing more than a match between equals." Me mother looked at me in shock. Is this really what you think? Being so arrogant, you have no shame." I interrupted her. "Mother, let me advise you. Give up in this lifetime. I will never live like you." My mother and I had a terrible fight, but she placed me under house arrest, and I couldn't get any messages out. Originally, I wasn't worried. Her stupid method wouldn't work anyway. Although she had me under house arrest, I would go to the Marquis Manor every few days to pay my respects. And if grandmother didn't see me for a long time, she would surely ask about it. After staying home for a few days, the Marquis Manor indeed sent someone to fetch me. But my maid Juzong said that my mother sent the person back with just a few words. Because of this, my mother even came before me and scolded me. She said, "How can a granddaughter of the Marquis Manor compare in value to a legitimate daughter of the Marquis Manor? Think about whose belly you were born from to have this good fortune." But I felt something was wrong. Grandmother wasn't the type to give up so easily. Later, I had Jusong find a way to slip some money to Mama Jin, who served my mother. Only then did I find out. Grandmother had fallen ill. My mother kept this news tightly sealed, and even told the people from the Marquis Manor that I was sick too, which is how she sent them away. I asked anxiously, what illness does grandmother have? Jusong said she was very seriously ill and had already started seeking elixirs. My vision instantly went dark, and I collapsed into a chair. Jusong asked me tearfully, Miss, what should we do? I murmured. Let me think for a moment. In this situation, Mother should have gone to the Marquis Manor herself to inquire about the illness. But these past days, she hasn't stepped out even once. Jusang heard from Mama Jin that the excuse she gave was that I had typhoid fever, and she was caring for me day and night. Afraid of bringing the sickness to the Marquis Manor, could it be that she is trying to drag it out until grandmother is beyond help? As soon as this thought arose, I became so angry my hands were shaking. I don't know if it is for myself or for grandmother. Things having come to this point, I actually calmed down first. I won't get the truth from mother's mouth. So I ordered Jusong to go steal any random item from the betrothal gift sent by Prince Jing's manor and bring it back. Jusong did know how to pick. What she brought back was a painting Luzi had painted with his own hands. I had just unrolled it to admire. It depicted a majestic stag in the mountains, those magnificent antlers, that weathered bearing, as if the deer spirit leapt right off the paper. He painted it when he was at the deer park, and I was right beside him. I had begged him to give it to me once he finished. But back then he was so stingy. He refused no matter what. As someone who also loves painting, I knew why he couldn't bear to part with it. This stroke of inspiration was worth 1,000 gold. How could he easily give it away? What is more, I was just a little girl barely over 10 years old at the time. I looked at this painting with surprise and delight, and just praised Jusong. You are pretty good at picking. Then Wang Ru came, she said furiously. Wang Yun, you thief! Wang Ru rushed over to snatch my painting. My heart was bleeding inside, but I still let her do it. After all, I'd get these things back sooner or later. I stared at her. This was mine to begin with. I originally wanted to remind her that there was also a few specially composed for me by Liu Zi on it, with my name and his feelings hidden inside. And the sea of clouds in the painting wasn't there originally. He added it specially for me when giving it to me, but I was afraid if I said it, she'd just tear up the painting right then and there. This idiot really would do that. No matter what trouble she caused, my mother would clean up after her anyway. She handed the painting to the maid beside her and mocked me coldly. You think you can still marry into Prince Jing's manor? Dream on, I looked at her calmly. My maternal grandmother won't abandon me. Her eyes narrowed. This meant she was about to lose her temper, but she actually held it in. Probably my mother had specially instructed her. Seeing this, I added fuel to the fire. You think you, a legitimate daughter of the Wang family, are something special. Without the Marquis Manor, forget you, even the Wang family would be nobodies. I am different from you. I have the blood of the Marquis Manor flowing through me. Finally, she couldn't hold it in anymore. She yelled at me directly. Your grandmother is about to die. You think you can still be arrogant. I pinched my palm hard and stared at her. Impossible. I've never heard of this. Wang Ru sneered. How would they tell you the old lady was already so sick the day before yesterday that she couldn't even speak? Even the immortality pills bestowed by the palace were useless. I took deep breaths desperately. Impossible. This is impossible. She became even more smug, pointing at me. The granddaughter of the Marquis Manor. In the entire Marquis Manor, only the old lady cares about you. Once the old lady dies, no one will give a damn whether you live or die. Let me tell you, your mother is just waiting for the old lady to kick the bucket so she can send you off to observe mourning. You still want to get married, dream on. I stared at her intently, but you've said it all out loud. Wang Ru was probably scared by my gaze and took a step back, but she quickly perked up again. She sneered. So what if I said it? What can you do about it, sisters? This is the legendary villain dies from talking too much. Wang Ru, you are such a tool, spilling everything the female lead needed to know, whether you should have said it or not. I am giving this assist full marks. But seriously, this your grandmother is dying. Taunting style is way too low, isn't it? Feels like her IQ got eaten by the admonitions for women. No wonder she gets played like a fiddle by the female lead later. After Wang Ru left, it took me a long time to calm down. For a moment, I didn't know if I felt more shock or anger. I still remember back then. When I shamefully confessed to my mentor that I harbored resentment towards my parents. This went against filial piety. That day I lay on my mentor's lap, listening to her say to me, "There is no reason in this world why one should suffer simply for being someone's child. Your resentment exists only because you can distinguish right from wrong." She also said that even 2,000 years later, when parents speak with stern voices and harsh expressions, it would still be difficult for young children to raise their heads. I didn't know why she said 2,000 years, but perhaps this is a truth that remains unchanged throughout eternity. She said, "Yuner, even if it is difficult, you must raise your head, be able to distinguish right from wrong, and dare to judge right from wrong." Thinking of my mentor's teachings, I silently wiped away my tears. "Since you show no benevolence, don't blame me for being unrighteous." After repeated requests, my mother finally agreed to see me. When I entered her room, I saw her looking completely impatient. "If you are here to make a fuss about your sister's marriage again, just forget it. Your father and I have made up our minds." I suppressed the anger in my heart, knelt and sat before her, and brought up another matter. Mother, every time father storms off and doesn't come home, don't you find it strange where he goes?" Mother's expression didn't change at all. "This isn't something you should be meddling in." Actually, I knew she had vaguely guessed something, but father kept his household clean. He didn't even have a maid close to him, and she had always taken pride in this. Whatever happens outside, she shouldn't care about it anymore. After all, she has always considered herself a virtuous woman who has thoroughly read the admonitions for women. Looking at her now, even if I told her today that my dad kept 10 or 8 mistresses, she wouldn't care. But, I said, every time it is on West Market Street. My dad's keeping a tofu beauty there, and he is at her place every day. I thought about it and added some details for her. I heard that mistress looks a lot like Wangru's mother. She even runs a tofu shop now, and my dad often takes Wangru to see her. A family of 3, happy and harmonious. My mother immediately went crazy, watching my mother's frenzied figure rush out. I just let out a cold laugh. Jusong helped me up from the ground. "Miss, why did you choose to tell her at this time?" "I've known about this for a long time, but I've just been holding it in without saying anything. Because of my maternal grandmother, she still can't bear to be harsh on my mother, no matter how disappointing my mother is. If she really gets into huge trouble, grandmother still can't bear to abandon her. But my aunt-in-law, Lady Zhang, is different. She and my mother have never gotten along. Mainly because there is a chapter called Uncles and Sisters-in-Law in the Admonitions for Women that teaches women to please their husband's siblings. The Admonitions for Women says that a woman gains her husband's love through her parents-in-law's love, and gains her parents-in-law's love through her husband's siblings' love. From this reasoning, a woman's entire worth lies in her husband's siblings. So my mother, as the younger sister in the uncle-sister relationship, naturally expected my aunt to fawn over her, but my aunt couldn't be bothered with her at all. All these years my mother had been throwing her weight around at her maiden home, making my aunt suffer so much grievance. Now that maternal grandmother had fallen ill, she was using illness as an excuse not to visit, and even dared to run out to the streets and make a fool of herself. My aunt would tear her apart. That idiot mother of mine was still gloating that I'd lost the backing of maternal grandmother. Little did she know, the one who truly lost her backing was herself. Juzong asked me if I wanted to take advantage of mother bringing all her trusted servants out and escape to Marquis Manor. I thought it over and over, but still held back. Aunt was thorough in her actions. She definitely wouldn't make a scene about this in front of maternal grandmother who was recuperating, and it would be best if I didn't go either. Maternal grandmother's illness was so critical. If she really got upset and something bad happened, that would be terrible. So I just stayed home bathing and changing clothes, burning incense and praying that maternal grandmother could get through this ordeal. After about half a day or so, my mother actually came back first on her own. Jusong came running back to tell me, "Miss, the mistress is injured." I was stunned. How did it get to the point of injury? "What about Wangru and my father?" Jusong said, "Didn't see them. I had her go out and find out what happened." Jusong was originally a maid by my mother's side, so she quickly got the full story. Turns out when my mother rushed over with people, she happened to run into my father and Wangru both at West Market. When my mother saw the style of that house, she started going crazy, and despite the wide open doors with people coming and going, she began hurling abuse. I asked, "What about my father?" The master didn't say a word, just kept protecting his mistress. It was Wangru who pointed at Madame's nose and hurled abuse. She cursed things like usurping the magpie's nest. If it weren't for you, my mother would be Lady Wang. You can never replace my mother, and such. Madame flew into a rage and came to blows with them. I heard the master push Madame, and she fell onto a stone mill and injured her waist. My mother is really something the legitimate wife from a Marquis Manor's direct line of descent, bringing a group of servants to the mistress's house, yet getting injured and carried back. I tidied up and went to see my mother. She was still going crazy, crying and refusing to take medicine, and also beating and scolding Nanny Jin, who was by her side. Why did you drag me back? Are you in cahoots with them, or what? Nanny Jin anxiously urged. Madam, you can't make a scene anymore? Today's incident will surely reach the Marquis' manor. My mother cried, I've suffered such humiliation. Naturally, I must let my natal family know. Nanny Jin said, Madam, the Marchioness is gravely ill now. You've never gotten along with General Wei's wife, and if she finds out your previous illness was fake, the consequences will be unthinkable. General Wei's wife is my aunt. Since my uncle holds the official position of commander of the Jinwu Guards, she is naturally General Wei's wife. My mother was still going crazy. She is just a minor official's daughter. Marrying into my family is already a huge blessing, and she dares to gossip about my affairs. I could see she was determined to drag her sick body to confront my father. At that moment, I turned my head and saw my maternal aunt. When my aunt arrived, I was standing at the door and hadn't gone in yet. She was the daughter of a military general and a lady of a great household, with a dignified expression and quite an imposing manner. Right now, regardless of my mother still going crazy inside, she first looked me up and down. Seeing me dressed entirely in plain clothes, her expression eased slightly. Good child, were you frightened? I shook my head. At this moment, my mother inside the room heard that my aunt had come and made a scene again. What are you doing here? Did you come to laugh at me? Get out, my aunt remained unmoved. She asked me, weren't you sick? I said in a low voice in reply to aunt. Yuner is in good health. Inside, my mother went silent. My aunt understood and asked again, if that is the case, your maternal grandmother is sick, why didn't you come to inquire about her illness? I turned my head and glanced inside the room. My aunt raised her eyebrows. Tell the truth. I stepped back, knelt at my aunt's feet, and said with tears, in reply to Aunt Yuner dare not lie. My mother, she has confined me. In that instant, my mother rushed directly out of the room to tear me apart. Well then, you wretched thing. So all of this was calculated by you. Only now did my mother realize that I had deliberately told her about my father's affairs to lure my aunt here. She probably just realized that grandmother wouldn't be coming to back her up, and immediately panicked. Seeing her about to rush over and hit me, how could aunt indulge her? She immediately ordered those around to hold her down. My mother had injured her waist, and being held down made her cry out in pain. Mama Jin anxiously shed tears. Madam, please have mercy. My young lady is delicate and precious. She can't endure this. Aunt glanced at her indifferently and ordered those around. Take this old slave who can't properly guide her mistress out and slap her mouth. My mother stared wide-eyed in terror. You dare. What wouldn't Aunt dare to do? Soon Mama Jean, who usually had absolute power in the household, was dragged out to have her mouth slapped. My mother cried and screamed, no longer showing any trace of a noble lady's demeanor. Aunt frowned in disgust and took me away from the scene. Moving to the flower hall, a servant under Aunt came to report that my father had hidden with Wangru at a colleague's home. Aunt merely gave a cold laugh. She put down her teacup and asked me, was it you who led me here? I knelt before her and readily admitted, yes. Aunt looked thoughtful. Why? Why did your mother put you under house arrest? I said with tears, Aunt, grandmother has been ill for over half a month. Yet I only heard about it the day before yesterday. This was an opportunity I had fought hard to obtain, so naturally I wouldn't let it slip away. So I told them everything in one go, how my mother planned to have Wangru marry in my place, and how she placed me under house arrest to prevent me from complaining to my grandmother. My aunt was so angry that the teacup in her hand was trembling. Absurd. Does she think she alone has the final say over a place like Prince Jing's manor? I raise my head. I dare not ask aunt to make decisions for me. It is just that, since grandmother has such tender affection for Yuner. How can Yuner not go see her? My aunt calmed down a bit. So you schemed against your mother? I said. I only told her that father has a mistress. She rushed out on her own. Didn't she know that grandmother was ill? Didn't she know that she herself was also feigning illness to avoid visiting the sick? Didn't she realize that her actions would break the Marquis Manor's heart? Yet she still went. If it were grandmother in front of me today, she might scold me a bit, saying that no matter what, I shouldn't let my own mother go out and humiliate herself so badly. Too bad it wasn't her. My aunt only sighed. Forget it. She has brought this upon herself. The reason my aunt came this time was to sort out the affairs of my household. I didn't leave for the time being because my mother told grandmother that I was gravely ill. If I suddenly appeared, grandmother would definitely realize something was wrong. So I watched as my aunt had all the servants in my household beaten. First were the few capable old servants by my mother's side, then the maids and even the people in my father's and Wang Ru's quarters weren't spared, taking turns beating and interrogating them. I didn't think much of it at first, until I discovered that girl Jusong was actually watching on the side and laughing out loud. I was so scared I quickly dragged her aside. Jusong still couldn't control her excitement. Usually these old slaves give us so much grief. Now it is their turn to suffer. I could understand her though. As the most loyal maid by my side, she'd suffered way more than me. The kind who'd come back with 2 big slap marks on her face every few days. But I still reminded her, Aunt is a strict person. You better not let her see you, or you'll be the one dragged out for a beating. Jusong's face changed. Her smile instantly disappeared. I pinched her cheek, told her to keep that expression, then went in to see my mother. No choice, still gotta put on a show. My mother was originally faking illness, but this time she actually got sick for real. Now the people serving by her side are all my aunt's people. The moment she opens her eyes, she'd rather just die. I was actually a bit amused. She groggily woke up, saw it was me, and still glared at me. Where is your father? I said. Father walked to the front gate, heard aunt was here, and ran off, haven't seen him since. As always, he waits for mother to deal with things first. Mother struggled to get up, grabbing me. Where is Ruer? She can't just not come back, can she? I said. She didn't come back either. She is the apple of father's eye. How could he bear to let her walk into the tiger's den? So my mother's lips trembled. Your aunt. She is taking personal revenge under the guise of public duty. What I thought to myself was, yeah, why did you have to defend her? Haven't you heard that you should leave some leeway when dealing with people, so you can meet again in the future? But the servant my aunt sent to look after her was still there. So I said, Mother, you are overthinking it. Aunt is here to back you up. My mother, she looked around at this dark and cold room, then glanced at me standing by the bed. Has your grandmother been here? I shook my head. Grandmother, how would she have the strength to come over? So my mother started crying again, a feeble cry without much strength. She began to complain about her grievances. I've been married into the Wang family for so many years, wholeheartedly thinking of your father, following the rule that the husband is heaven. Even my own daughter has been wronged. I listened silently. She cried even harder. How could your father be so heartless, letting me fall into such a state? I couldn't help but mock her. Mother. Father was able to abandon his first wife back then. He has always been a heartless man. She suddenly said, Yuner, you are all mother has left. No exaggeration, she scared me so much I shuddered and immediately stepped back. My mother looked at me, her eyes like she'd grabbed onto a lifeline. Mother was wrong in the past. Mother understands now. Only you are mother's good daughter. You've been so obedient and filial since childhood, never making things difficult for mother. I stepped back again, almost backing into the table. She said, Yoon, our mother has come to her senses. I'll treat you well from now on. That Wangru will never take your marriage. I was silent for a moment before saying, Mother, you really don't need to do this. After all, her plan to have Wangru marry in my place was never going to work anyway. No need for you to come to your senses about it. An probably really did mean to settle both public and private scores. She turned the Wang family upside down and dug up all the good deeds my mother had done over the years. Then my uncle came. This was my mother's own biological brother after all, and my mother cried and complained to him. My uncle was almost softening, but aunt said she wanted Wangru to replace Yunar and marry into the prince's manor, and even said with her own mouth that once grandmother is gone, there will be no one left to back Yunar up, things like that. Uncle flew into a rage and wouldn't listen to any of my mother's explanations. He pointed at my mother and said, "You just rot in this Wang family then. Our Marquis Manor will act as if we never had a daughter like you." With that, he left in a fury. My mother cried and tried to chase after him, but ended up falling off the bed, screaming miserably, "Elder brother, are you really abandoning me as your sister?" Uncle walked to the doorway and paused in his steps. Hope instantly ignited in my mother's eyes. However, Uncle only turned to look at me. "Yunar, come." I quickly walked over. "Uncle," he asked, "do you want to go back with Uncle? A mother like this you are better off without." I turned to look at my mother. Now that father isn't here and mother is truly ill, I must stay to take care of her. This dynasty governs the realm through filial piety. Although Lucy once said that, in the so-called promotion of the filially pious and incorruptible, the character for filial piety comes before incorruptibility, simply because the emperor believes those with utmost filial piety won't rebel. It is merely the emperor's scheme for selecting servants, but everyone buys into this, my uncle too. He sighed, "Good child, your aunt will leave 2 people here for you. You can leave whenever you want. Rest assured, even if your maternal grandmother, your uncle will protect you in the future." I thanked him and saw him and my aunt out after everyone left. I went to help my mother up. She cried in my arms very desperately. Go bring your father back." I gently helped her onto the bed, then said, "Mother, what is the point of bringing him back? It is not like you don't know he has never had you in his heart." My mother shuddered and looked at me in disbelief. You didn't stay to keep me company." I smiled and whispered in her ear, "I stayed to watch you make a fool of yourself." She completely froze. I gently tucked the blanket around her. "I've waited many years, and finally, you are about to be abandoned by everyone." Oh my God. The female lead's counterattack has me standing up and applauding. "What do you mean by I stayed to watch you make a fool of yourself?" This is true. Ultimate female lead literature. Previously, she pretended to be filial so flawlessly, and now she is flipping the table. I love this reversal, but honestly, the female lead's scheming and cunning are kind of similar to her scumbag. Dads accept she is using it for the right cause. Sure enough, to deal with evil people, you gotta be even more ruthless than them. What the woman's commandments can't teach. Lifeful my father finally came back. He is really something, actually staying away for so many days. Waiting until the people from the Marquis Manor left before returning, and when he came back he brought my full brother Wang Xin with him. My brother's circumstances are vastly different from mine. He is my father's only son, the hope of the family. He is only 17 this year, yet my maternal grandfather already secured him a minor official position. But there is no affection between him and me. When we were little, he always stayed with Wangru, and when we grew up I hardly saw him a few times a year. My father didn't say anything, but he yelled at my mother, "Mother, look at the mess you've made. Father and I have both been suspended from our posts." My mother was shocked. "How could this be? Even you, Shinner. Why wouldn't it be? The matter has spread throughout the capital city. Not only have I been suspended, everyone's laughing at me too." My mother collapsed on the bed, tears streaming down. She had been tormented terribly these past few days. She'd visibly lost weight, looking haggard and sickly, but my older brother clearly didn't care about any of that. He started cursing at my mother. "How could you be so impulsive? You've completely disgraced our family. Now I don't know what will become of fathers and my future prospects." My mother for once actually stood her ground. She cried, "Why don't you ask what good deeds your father has done? He is heartless and ungrateful. Do you know that my brother impatiently cut her off? Isn't it just a concubine? Is it worth making such a scene?" My mother was shocked, and she immediately realized, You knew all along." My brother said, "Yeah, I've known for a long time. Besides, Pingyang is a really nice person. She even makes me tofu pudding." Oh right, this time Pingyang was also taken by the Marquis Manor. "So what are you going to do about it?" My mother immediately broke down, crying her heart out. "You get out, all of you get out." My father had been sitting there drinking tea this whole time. At this point, he finally couldn't take it anymore. stood up and said with annoyance, "Unreasonable, my brother also took a step back, looking at my mother with utter disbelief. And you claim to be from a distinguished family. Really, the father and son pair left casually. They never even noticed I was standing in the corner. I lowered my head and smiled. Well, of course, I've never existed in their eyes anyway." I looked at my mother's heartbroken and desperate appearance. Once upon a time, I had also wondered if one day she finally discovered that the marital love she valued most, the two children she held dearest to her heart, were in fact all feigning affection toward her. What would she do? Now I finally know. This is how ugly it looks. I haven't even had time to sort through my own thoughts. She suddenly turned to look at me. It is all because of you." I frowned. "What?" she said. "If I hadn't given birth to you, I wouldn't have had so many conflicts with your grandmother, and I wouldn't have offended your aunt." Most of her disputes with grandmother were because of me, because she had to fight for Wangru, and aunt had indeed argued with her over matters concerning me. She probably thinks this incident is also because of me. I felt a subtle stinging pain in my heart. So it turns out even now she can still hurt my heart so easily. For parents to hurt their own children, just one sentence. "I wish I'd never given birth to you," is enough, but this heartache quickly subsided. "It is useless for you to regret it. I never asked you to give birth to me," I said indifferently. My mother covered her face and cried, "You disaster, you are just like them. All ungrateful wretches." I leaned in and said by her ear, "Mother, you don't need to be so heartbroken and despairing just yet." She looked at me blankly. I said quietly, "Without you, father and elder brother would have absolutely nothing, right now. Their futures are still in your hands." Juzong held up the lantern and led me away from my mother's courtyard. She asked me in a low voice, "Miss, why are we still helping the family head and the young master?" I looked at the pitch-black path before me and sneered. As if I am helping them, my mother no longer has the strength for that now. If she really dragged her sick body to make a scene, the Wang family would have no choice but to go back to wherever they came from. And that is exactly what I am hoping for. How wonderful the four of them. A family can just go where they belong and live their lives. Jusong was a bit worried, "Miss, you are after all the daughter of the Wang family, and your marriage." I smiled. "Don't worry. This marriage was originally arranged for me by my mentor, Madam Shi. My father's most terrifying trait has always been his coldness. Even if the sky were falling, he rarely quarreled with my mother face to face. Actually, back then, the matter of my father abandoning his first wife and deceiving his way into marriage with Marquis Manor only came to light when I was around 6 years old. His first wife traveled 1,000 miles with their daughter to find him in the capital city, and deceived by him, she willingly became his mistress. But that woman had some backbone after all. Perhaps she finally saw through my father's heartlessness and hypocrisy. When my mother discovered her, she was already gravely ill from depression and passed away not long after. That time my mother was completely in the right, and I watched her confront my father, but my father just looked at her coldly the whole time. The most he ever said was just one line, "Things have come to this. What do you want me to do?" My mother was like a fist striking cotton. She gradually quieted down from her hysteria and finally started muttering to herself. My mentor mentioned a very interesting term called brainwashing. I also think her brain was washed by my dad, and she even washed it again herself with the admonitions for women. She actually said, "I also cherish Lord Wang's deep affection. My dad even became a heartbroken person who needed her comfort. This comforting went on for nearly 10 years. I thought she didn't want to argue with a dead person, or perhaps hoped that affection would transfer to her. Unfortunately, the appearance of that tofu beauty shattered her dream." I turned to look at my mother's courtyard, wondering, has her dream really been shattered? Not necessarily. My mother indeed didn't disappoint me. She pestered my dad for several days to no avail. My dad just kept that same old attitude anyway. My mother couldn't take it anymore, so she had people carry her frail body to the Marquis Manor again, but my dad made a mistake. Now was no longer the time when controlling my mother meant controlling the Marquis Manor. That day I went with my mother, but she didn't even make it through the Marquis Manor's main gate. It was pouring rain too. Yet she didn't care about her own body and planned to cry at the Marquis Manor's entrance until grandfather and grandmother agreed to see her. Filial daughter that I am, I stood beside her holding an umbrella for her. Before even a quarter hour had passed, my aunt's people came out, directly grabbed her, gagged her mouth, and threw her into a carriage, then ordered people to haul her back. This was tantamount to announcing to the world that the Marquis Manor no longer wanted this daughter. In the carriage, my mother was shivering from the rain. She still wouldn't give up and ordered those around her, Go fetch the eldest young master. He is of the Marquis Manor's bloodline. My elder brother was cut from the same cloth as my father, always only knowing how to hide under my mother's protection. He was very afraid of my maternal grandfather and uncle, and originally hemmed and hawed, unwilling to go, but once my father saw he couldn't count on my mother anymore, he began cursing at him furiously. This is your own reputation, your own future. If you don't even have this much courage, how will you accomplish great things in the future? My elder brother wasn't stupid, though, and knew to talk back to him. But, Father, this is a mess you created. My father's face turned green. He directly slapped my elder brother across the face. You wretch, how dare you judge your father? He even pointed at me standing right there beside them and said, even your sister knows to accompany your mother. You are the only useless one in the whole family. My elder brother had no choice but to go. Then he was carried back. I heard from Juzong that my elder brother didn't manage to enter the door either. This time, my own maternal uncle came out in person, beat him with several heavy boards right there on the street in the rain, and rebuked him for being unfilial. My brother with his delicate skin and tender flesh was carried back and passed out. Before, it was my mother who was afraid. Now it was my father's turn. He wasn't just afraid, he was terrified. With no time to look after his son's injuries, he finally took the initiative to go to my mother's quarters. But my mother was overcome with grief, and her already frail body was drenched in a heavy rain, causing her to develop a fever and lose consciousness. My father knelt beside her bed, calling out softly, my lady, with the tender affection in his tone. If my mother had heard it under normal circumstances, she would have been overjoyed. Unfortunately, my mother was sleeping so deeply at that moment that no amount of calling could wake her. My father had always been aloof and cold toward his family, but now I saw him panicked like a frightened rat. He rubbed my mother's hands vigorously, muttering, my lady, please wake up, or the Wang family will be finished. Of course, my mother never did wake up in the end. My father suddenly turned his head and saw me, as if grasping at a lifeline. He said to me, you, come with me. This father of mine led me to the study and gave me a bit of cheap warmth. With all that has happened at home lately, were you frightened? I looked up at him with an innocent expression. Father, are you referring to mother's plan to have sister Mary in my place? His face instantly twisted somewhat, then he said, your mother actually had such an idea? How detestable, I had no idea she was this absurd. I actually laughed, yes, how absurd. If this matter had succeeded, Father's career in officialdom would be over too. After all, Prince Jing's manor wouldn't just swallow this insult. My father showed an expression of lingering fear. Yes, watching him like this, I laughed inwardly. All these years Mother has spoiled him rotten, and his vision has become so narrow, he really thought that with Mother backing him, everything could be solved. Now that he has come to his senses, he probably hates Mother to death too. But he quickly reacted, right now. This isn't the most urgent matter. Yunar, don't worry, Father will handle everything for you. However, you'd better go to the Marquis Manor in person. Sure enough, he has set his sights on me, wanting me to go beg Grandfather. After all, Grandfather dotes on me very much too. He even gave me earnest teachings, repeatedly explaining the stakes involved, basically saying that the Wang family and I share honor and disgrace together. He even specifically instructed me that even if I have to cry myself to death at the Marquis Manor, I must get this matter done. I nodded, all right, I'll go to the Marquis Manor the next day. Father personally escorted me to the Marquis Manor. He was as cowardly as ever. He had me get off at the entrance of the alley. Father will watch you enter the Marquis Manor from here. I said, okay. As I was about to leave, he called out to me again. Yunar, Father hesitated a bit, then instructed me again. Once you are inside, you must tearfully beg your grandfather to calm his anger. Father's official position, your brother's official position, mention them all. Hearing this, I nodded. Daughter has remembered everything. Father continued. Also, your brother will be 18 next year. You should also mention the matter of recommending him as a filial and incorrupt. After all, Family recommendations only lead to minor idle positions. Only by being nominated as filial and incorrupt can one hold a proper post. I still nodded. After instructing me all this, he added, also that Ping Yang, I heard she was taken away by the Marquis Manor. When you go, mention it too, see if you can find out where she is, and come back to tell Dad. From the looks of it, my mother is stupid. My father is greedy. They really are a perfect match, Emmy. My father probably really doesn't understand me at all. When he heard me agree, he showed a relieved expression. Go on, good child, the glory of the Wang clan rests on your shoulders. I went to knock on the door of the Marquis Manor. When the gatekeeper saw it was me, he immediately let me in and ran to report my arrival. Aunt came out to greet me personally. You are here. I paid my respects to her and said, my father sent me to ask for help. Aunt's expression immediately turned sour. I added, I am afraid it won't be easy to explain when I go back, so I was thinking of staying at the Marquis Manor. Aunt, is that all right? Only then did Aunt turn from anger to joy, smiling. Good, actually, we've already discussed it. You'll get married from the Marquis Manor. I asked cautiously, may I go see grandmother? Aunt sighed. Go see her. Just say your illness has recovered. It seems they're keeping it sealed tight as a drum. I went to see grandmother earlier. I heard she couldn't even speak anymore, making people feel she could go at any moment. The family had even prepared a coffin when I entered her room. I felt the scent of medicine lingering everywhere. Grandmother lay in bed. Her hair had turned completely white. My heart ached, and I walked over to hold her hand, pressing my face against her palm. My grandmother was the first person in this world to cherish me. I used to wonder if grandmother favored my mother more, which was why she indulged her so much. But I came to understand later that even if she loved my mother deeply in her heart, she never let me suffer even a little bit because of my mother. It is just that you can't have everything both ways. I lay crying beside her sick bed, my tears wetting her palm. Suddenly, I felt her fingers move. I looked up in surprise. Grandmother opened her eyes groggily and said, Yuner, is that you? Are you better now? Are you still feeling unwell? I was so excited I could barely speak. Someone come quickly. Grandmother's awake. That day the doctor came to see her and said grandmother had made it through this crisis. She went from being completely bedridden at first to gradually being able to sit up. I attended to her medicine and soup at her bedside every day, feeling incredibly fortunate. This was truly my greatest blessing. Marquis Manor was peaceful. No matter how noisy things got outside, it couldn't reach us here. Actually, I knew that my grandfather despised my father the most and was always harsh and stern with him. I once heard my father get angry after having a few too many drinks at home, cursing, one day I'll climb above them and make them know how formidable I am. Ridiculous, a century-old Marquis Manor isn't so easily shaken. Let alone the fact that my father never had much ability to begin with. I didn't know what the situation at my home had become. Until that day, when my grandmother's health had improved a bit, I accompanied her as we slowly strolled through the garden to lift her spirits. My grandfather came with my uncle to beg forgiveness. Grandfather supported grandmother and had her sit down comfortably. He came from a military background, was built large and burly, yet his movements were so cautious as if he were handling glass. He said, "Sit steady now. Don't be startled. Don't get upset." My grandmother looked at him in bewilderment. "My lord, what great matter have you done now that you need to tell this concubine about?" Grandfather hastily coaxed. "I am just afraid that you've just recovered from your serious illness and will get upset again." "Forget it. Let's not talk about it. We'll discuss it when you are better." As he spoke, he actually tried to pull my uncle away with him. My grandmother was furious, my lord. Only then did grandfather quickly turn right back around and point at uncle with his thick finger. "You speak." Uncle hurriedly knelt down and was about to begin. Grandfather was extremely alarmed again. You be careful how you say it." "Never mind, uncle. I was nearly scared to death." Uncle was like facing a great enemy, trembling with trepidation, extremely cautious. He said my father was going to take my mother back to our old home in the countryside. I frowned slightly. This was planning to threaten the Marquis Manor. After all, a married woman follows her husband. He wanted the Marquis Manor to feel heartache over mother suffering hardship, and grieve that they'd hardly see mother for the rest of their lives. Thou, I found it contemptible. I still carefully watched grandmother's expression, terrified she'd get so angry, something would happen to her. But grandmother remained very calm. she sighed. So it has really come to this after all. Only then did Uncle gradually become bolder. So he told her about how my mother wanted Wang Ru to marry in her place, and how she made a scene after discovering my father kept a mistress, which ultimately led to my father and brother losing their official positions. He also mentioned that my mother came to make a scene while sick. My brother came too, and later they sent me over. But he didn't mention that she had privately said she hoped grandmother would die. However, grandmother was sharp as a tack. She laughed coldly. I wondered why I haven't seen my Yuner. Turns out she is hoping for my death so she can arrange the marriage for that Wang Ru. Uncle immediately looked ashamed. Mother, perhaps. Little sister didn't mean it that way. Grandmother waved her hand dismissively. No need to make excuses for her. I know perfectly well what kind of daughter I gave birth to. She didn't seem surprised at all, Uncle cautiously confirmed. So we'll just leave it alone? Of course your son will have someone keep an eye on them. What is there to keep an eye on? This is the path she chose herself. It felt like grandfather immediately let out that big breath he'd been holding. He laughed heartily, his voice booming. My wife gave birth to her in the clouds, but she insists on going into the mud. If we don't stop her, that is already showing her kindness. My wife, from now on, don't listen to any news about her. You just focus on taking good care of yourself, grandmother smiled along with him. After a long while, a hint of melancholy flashed inconspicuously in her eyes. A month later, I was grinding ink for grandfather. My parents, who said they were going back to the countryside, appeared at the Marquis Manor's entrance. Samoan came in to relay the message, saying they came to bid farewell. Grandfather said if they were leaving, they would have left already. What is this about? Did they wait around? And seeing we didn't go to ask them to stay, came back themselves. After saying that, he directly had someone drive them away. Shortly after, a servant came in to report again, saying, the young lady says she wants to take Miss Yoon with her. My mother said that since I am the daughter of the Wang family, naturally I should go with her. She used to make scenes like this often, holding me hostage to threaten grandmother, and it worked every time. Too bad this time she ran into grandfather. Grandfather was furious upon hearing this. She is trying to anger her mother to death. How did I give birth to such an unfilial thing? Go drive them all out of the capital for me. Yes, the servant left again. Grandfather was still trying to comfort me with his booming voice. Yuner, don't be afraid, grandfather is here. At this moment, grandmother suddenly appeared at the doorway. Grandfather jerked his head up, somewhat flustered. My lady, he was afraid grandmother had heard and would be heartbroken. However, grandmother didn't ask about it at all and said to me, Yuner, come. I followed grandmother back to her room. I thought she would ask about mother leaving the city, but instead she said, do you resent your mother? I looked at her with suspicion and uncertainty. She sighed, tell me the truth. I couldn't avoid it, so I said, yes, resentful. Grandmother gave a bitter laugh. She said, it is her incompetence, unable to make her children respect and love her. How could I not know that your elder brother also has not half a bit of respect for her? I didn't know her intentions and feared she knew I had schemed all this behind the scenes and thought, actually, I didn't make it too obvious, did I? It was just that, in front of my mother and father, I said a few instigating words. In front of my aunt, I didn't say a single wrong word. To reach today, I've achieved what I wished for, only because I understand my parents too well, and also understand my aunt. I shouldn't have been discovered while I was lost in wild thoughts. Grandmother suddenly placed a copy of Admonitions for Women in front of me. Grandmother, didn't you look down on this thing? Grandmother sighed. I used to think this book harmed your mother, but later when I often discussed this with your teacher, Madam Shi, I finally understood it wasn't actually. My mother didn't seem so useless when she was young. Grandmother hired the best female teacher for her and personally taught her proper conduct at home, so she couldn't figure out how she grew up to be like that. Onse, she also blamed Admonitions for Women, even resented the late Lady Ban. But actually, Admonitions for Women was originally just Lady Ban's family teachings. Lady Ban was favored by the Empress Dowager, specially permitted to participate in politics, leading her husband's Teo family to gradually become noble, and the women in the family also gradually became arrogant. She feared bringing disaster upon the Calzo family, so in her later years she wrote this book to admonish the girls of her clan. Unexpectedly, a scholar official saw it, took it to distribute, and it spread widely. Your master is right. When Admonitions for Women came out, Those who pursued it most fervently were actually a group of scholar officials. It was nothing more than to make it convenient for them to control their inner households. In other words, she felt that my mother was actually just deceived. Scholar officials exploited Lady Ban's reputation, using it to spread teachings of propriety while actually harming women. If we follow your master's explanation, your mother was merely a victim after works like admonitions for women came into the world. In the future, I am afraid it will only get worse. I looked at her with half understanding. Grandmother looked at me with pity. Yuner, you must be self-reliant and self-reflective. Even if you are trampled into the mud, even if that person is your blood relative, your beloved, don't forget who you are. Don't forget that you are neither humble, weak, nor lowly. This I understood. I stepped back and bowed deeply to grandmother. Yuner will remember. Grandmother showed a gratified smile also. Don't become a mother like yours. My marriage arrangement with the prince's manor remained unchanged. So my parents leaving the capital didn't have much impact on me, after staying at Marquis's manor for about a year. Those gossips and rumors faded even more. The wedding date was postponed twice. Lucy finally couldn't stand it anymore and had Madame Xi make a trip to Marquis Manor. My maternal grandfather said to my maternal grandmother with a smile, even if we try to keep her, we can't. Shall we send her off? Grandmother had no choice but to relent a little, but she was extremely reluctant to let go, holding my hand and teaching me for a long time. Then cried again. Grandfather consoled her. Yuner getting married is a happy occasion. As a result, she lashed out at him. What do you know? Now is different from back then. It is normal for me to worry. Although grandfather had a loud voice, he flinched when grandmother yelled at him. He joked with grandmother, you, this old man should also get a copy of Admonitions for Women for you to read. As soon as he finished speaking, my aunt and I both stood up in alarm. Only he would forget. My maternal grandmother absolutely cannot stand hearing the words Admonitions for Women. Grandfather, father, sure enough, he got a lion's roar from my maternal grandmother. Actually, grandfather wasn't afraid of being yelled at by her, but then she started crying again. Grandmother held my hand and said, what kind of person is Princess Jing? Will she use admonitions for women to demand things of my Yuner? No, Yuner let grandmother inquire more and delay the marriage a bit. So she kept me for another year. This time, neither Lucy nor Madame Xi could do anything about it. Whether Princess Jing reads Admonitions for Women or not doesn't matter, because Lucy doesn't care about his mother at all. The fact that he could say things like the Shalian system is nothing but the emperor's scheme to select servants back then shows just how much of a rebel he was. After we got married, he really did something quite rebellious. He took me and left the capital city directly, traveling across mountains and rivers, saying he wanted to work on some geographic chronicles of mountains and rivers. What proper heir in this world would do such a thing? But he somehow managed to persuade the Empress Dowager and His Majesty the Emperor. I don't know what was said at court, but he has always been good at sophistry anyway. One year, Prince Jing nearly rebelled. At only 16, he rallied officials from his territory while entering the palace to number. Number later, due to constraints from his vassals, Prince Jing's rebellion turned into a farce. The Empress Dowager even pitied his youth and praised his filial piety. Then he turned around and tricked his own younger brother who came to the capital city to plead guilty, and broke his legs. Lady Xi summoned him to answer for his crime. I was sitting beside Lady Xi at the time, also behind the bamboo curtain. He argued sophistically right in front of me, and I listened with great interest. When Lady Xi asked him, your mother favors your younger brother, don't you have any selfish motives? He answered, Mother's favoritism would not only harm me, but the entire Prince Jing's manor. If that is the case, then by correcting my parents' behavior and preserving Prince Jing's manor, I am naturally fulfilling complete filial piety. Lady Xi accepted that to be able to break the legs of a younger brother he disliked and still be praised as filial. Hearing that made me feel thoroughly delighted. What I did later was somewhat influenced by this guy. His sophistry in the palace was probably still so high-sounding. What he said in front of me was even more shocking. He said, my stupid old man won't die anytime soon anyway, so there is no rush to go back and inherit the throne. Might as well travel more and see more so as not to waste time. Every time I heard him say this kind of thing, I'd be both shocked and amused. Seeing that he made me laugh, he'd come up with a few new lines for me. Put it this way, if anyone overheard our private conversations as husband and wife, his wish to share the same coffin in death would probably be fulfilled ahead of schedule. Liu Zi's old man had a long life. We traveled to many places. Naturally, we also passed through Shan County, my father's hometown. I had thought that when they left the capital, they at least took a large amount of money and treasures with them, so no matter what, they could get by. But as soon as we arrived in Shan County, we saw my elder brother lying drunk by the roadside, having his money stolen by several people, and even his belt stripped away. Liu Zi and I exchanged glances. He said, "Shall we go take a look?" I said, "Look at what can't we see from a distance?" Oh, so we just rode our horses and watched from afar. My elder brother was only drunk, not dead drunk, sprawled on the country lane, still cursing loudly. Do you know who I am? My maternal grandfather is the Marquis of Guangping, and my younger sister is the wife of Prince Jing's heir. They'll bring me back to be an official someday. You just wait and see. Liu Zi found it amusing and even smiled. Dream on, I immediately lost interest, turned my horse around, and left. But on the way, I still casually stopped by the Wang family's old residence to take a look. It had been renovated and was now second to none in the area. Liu Zi asked me, "Do you want to go in?" I glanced at him. He smiled and said, "Got it?" Then he squeezed over again to tease me. "Every time you glare at me, I always feel like I am seeing grandmother glaring at grandfather. Tell me honestly, did you secretly learn from her?" I couldn't be bothered with him. Passing through this place was purely incidental. Since we were here, I just decided on a whim to take a look. I actually found my parents' current situation quite expected. Those two always had the ability to take a life in the clouds and drag it down into the mud. However, when we were leaving, we actually ran into Wangru. I almost didn't recognize her. She was heavily pregnant, arguing with a man who seemed to be her husband, while cursing, "What status are you? Being able to marry me means your ancestors' graves are smoking with luck. My younger sister married into a prince's mansion. If you dare disrespect me again, I'll have her come and chop off your head." After cursing at the man, she went on to curse at a little girl beside her, who should be her daughter. Making you read the admonitions for women is for your own good. If you read it well, you'll be able to marry into a prestigious family. And yet you still ran to your dad to complain, you damn girl. Under what should have been such a delightful blue sky and white clouds. All that could be heard were her scolding, her daughter's crying, and her husband's pleading. I watched all this expressionlessly. Suddenly, Liu Zi tugged at me and pointed to the side for me to look. I looked over and saw a girl holding a book in her hand, casually flipping through it before throwing it in a ditch, and running off singing. Paper was precious, yet someone would just throw it away like that. Liu Zi, that busybody, even ran over to look. He laughed and said, "Wife, it is the admonitions for women." I also smiled a little, then looked up at the sky again. I couldn't help but recall what my teacher said. For the next 2,000 years, this trend will only intensify, especially when the nation's power weakens. The harm inflicted upon women will become more severe, but fortunately, once we get through it, things will be better. I asked Liu Zi, does Aunt know shamanic arts or anything like that? She could always talk about things that would happen in the future. Liu Zi said, "How is that possible? She just loves to talk nonsense." I said, "You are also raised under her teachings. You are not allowed to speak ill of her." Liu Zi cheerfully said, "An doesn't mind anyway. She cares the least about these empty formalities, and she even likes to joke around with us." I thought about it, and it seemed to be true. So I urged him to hurry up and leave this vexing Xi'an County as soon as possible. I am going to farther places. Holy crap, I really didn't see this ending coming. The female lead and the prince just ran off to travel the world. Now this is a true feel-good ending. Screw all that inner palace scheming and family drama. This lady's done playing straight into vacation mode, and did you see what happened to Wangru? Textbook case of instant karma. Not only did she get brainwashed by the admonitions for women herself, she had to drag the next generation down with her. But the most ironic part, that little girl next to her daughter straight up threw the admonitions for women into a ditch. Now that is the beginning of awakening, sisters. Those of us reading this 2,000 years later can only say, Lady Shi wasn't lying to us. She really did make it through. Admonitions for women, sisters. This thing is the ancient version of a Pua manual. Originally, Ban Zhao wrote this because the girls in her family were too wild and she was afraid they'd get into trouble. But then a bunch of old men took it and used it as a wife-controlling Bible and spread it like crazy, stuff like, when a daughter is born, lay her on the floor for 3 days. Isn't that brainwashing from birth? The most absurd part says this: after a woman marries, she needs to please her sisters-in-law and brothers-in-law. Because your status depends entirely on their charity, I am truly in awe of that logic. In the story, the female lead's mother was CPU-ed to death by this theory and turned herself into a tool. But fortunately, the female lead had a clear-headed grandmother and an open-minded mentor who directly chose teachers from the anti-J camp for her, so she didn't repeat the same mistakes. So yeah, what you read really matters. Don't let garbage information pollute your brain.